In this video, we'll be going over the View tab inside of Pocket3D 15 code. On the bottom right hand of the screen, you'll see View. If we click on that tab, we have multiple selections inside of that window. Starting from the bottom, the most important is the About. Inside of the About, it will give me a bunch of different information, like the version of Pocket3D that I'm running, as well as the license if it's approved, and a bunch of different settings that we can purchase. If I go to License, this is the authorization code for the field you're using. This could be an Android tablet too. Back to View. Very important before we start using Pocket3D is to make sure that our display options are correct. So inside of display options, we have multiple settings inside of there as well. First thing we'll start with is language. A lot of people don't know this, but if you are running 12 code Pocket3D and you've upgraded to 15 and you cannot fathom how it looks, we can select English v12, say OK. The screen now displays the old flavor of software. If you are only going to be running 15 code, you will never need to use this. But if you have run 12 code and you just can't get over it, we can make these changes inside the software. If I hit Display Options. Back to language selecting, go back to English, say OK. It has now changed to the 15 code. I highly recommend this because the new 15 code machines have the same screen layout. The only difference is data and control are swapped. Control would be where data is and control is where data is. If I go to View, back to Display Options, very important here. One of the most important screens before using a field tablet is Display Units. If I click on that, I have distance. Multiple different settings. 2 to 3 decimal points. We won't talk about 1, but we'll talk about 3 and 2. If I'm using a total station or millimeter GPS, I am most likely going to want 3 decimal points because at this point, I am chasing thousands. Now with GPS, I'm going to use 2 decimal points because I'm only chasing hundreds. Angle, degrees, minutes, and seconds, north degrees, minutes, and seconds east. I highly recommend that you use degrees, minutes, and seconds. This is standard. If there is an issue here, your localization will set you off a couple feet. Percentage, you can do rise over run and percentage depending on how you like to see it inside the software. Stationing, that's up to you how you want to see it. I like to see 1 plus 0, 0, but totally up to the user's opt option. Volumes, cubic yards, cubic meters, wherever you're at in the world, that may change. Same with square feet. Square meters, that might change as well. We also have the option for square yards and acres. These are acres is actually very commonly used as well. Square feet and acres is very common. We're going to use square feet in this instance. Weight, US tons, is most likely if you're in the US. That's what we're going to be using. You got pounds and you got kilograms. So depending on where you're in the world, you'll make your selection. Northing, easting, and elevation. By default, the software will come with easting, northing, and elevation. I've seen this more in European job sites and users. They like to use easting, northing, and elevation. In America, you'll most likely see northing, northing, easting, and elevation. Date, minute, day, year, or month, day, year. And then time, hour, minutes, and seconds. These all need to be changed. These are standard. I'm going to say OK. Back to View, Display Options, Background Color, choose your flavor. By default, it comes gray. I like the color gray, so I'm going to keep it that color. View, Display Options, Shortcuts. Shortcuts are the displays that are on the screen. We won't mess with these. This is totally the user's option to decide what they want within that window. I can make other windows as well by hitting the Add button here. This will be covered later on. View, Display Options, Orientation. This is the way that I see the direction of how my rover I'm walking. I can do fixed orientation or direction of travel. This is also user preference, totally up to you. In 3D view. This is how I want to see what it is inside of 3D view. So show the sky, show lines with 0 elevations. This one's popular. Make sure that's left checked on. Surface color, this is totally up to you. The rainbow gradient, this is a cut and fill value reference to where the high part of the job is and the low part of the job is. That's it. It doesn't give you it's not an actual cut and fill map. It's just a high part of the job to a low part of the job. This will be covered later on. Show triangle meshes. This is not checked on by default, but when you're in 3D view, if you want to see your triangle meshes, go ahead and check that box on, and it'll do so. Say OK. View display options. Line work. This is how I see my line work by default. This is what ends up being checked. I can manage the rest from layers. So I just like to leave these all checked on, and then I'll manage everything else from the layer screen. We'll cover that later. Say OK. View, display options, points, also checked on by default. I would not leave these checked off. I would manage them in layers. Just like it says here for individual points, display settings per layer, go to data layers. Control points. This is a common one that may be used. Show points that are not part of a localization. Most likely, I would uncheck this if I did not want to see the points control points that are part of the localization. If I am not using them part of the localization, I do not want to see them. Most likely, the localize those points control points are bad, or I don't want to use them for some specific reason. This is not checked by default, but I highly recommend you use it. Enforce unique point names in layers. Basically, meaning that I cannot make the same name or have the same number inside of that layer. I'm going to say, OK. View, display options, working surfaces and alignments. We'll get more into detail on this one as I make this series go on. Show triangle meshes, by default, it's checked on. I do not like to see triangle meshes. I actually like to see contours at intervals. And then show boundaries and break lines. So how that would look is inside of here. This is my surface that I have. The boundary is blue, and these are my contours. And I can change those contours to be different size as well. We'll cover that later on in the series. We went through display options. Now what we need to do is go back to view, go to layout. This is customizable. So main menu, it can either be on the bottom or the top. If I hit top and I say OK, you will now notice that the drop-down menu is at the top. This is total user preference. If I go to layout, I can also hide it. So if I say OK, it will actually hide it now, and I'll get these 3 lines up top. If I click on those, it will then bring up the scroll menu. And after about 5 seconds or so, it will end up disappearing. Back to view layout. I'm going to click this auto hide, and I'm going to put this back to the bottom. That's where I like it. Couple different ways we can get great indicator on the screen. And if I click on that guy and I say OK, it will give me a great indicator here on the screen. It is not lit up right now because I am not connected. Nor do I have a surface activated. If I go back to view, grid lines. Grid lines, if I turn grid lines on, they're 20 by 20 right now. These are for topoing. This is a really good way to keep lines straight and your points organized. We'll go over that later on in the series. I'm going to go ahead and turn those off. View. The map. If you have connection via internet or cellular, what you can do is actually have street maps relative to where you are. In this instance, I don't have a connection, so it's not going to give me the street maps. But you can use street maps, and it basically is Bing Maps, OpenStreetMaps, contributors. If I go to view, go to display. We talked about maps. It's checked on. I'm going to check it off. Go back to view. This is a north arrow. This sits in the top right corner. I would like to have this on the screen. Very nice to see what my north is currently from where I'm standing as I turn this arrow return as well. The scale bar is the scale bar up in the corner, and this is how high I'm looking over the top of my receiver. So for instance, if I zoomed in to 10 to 5 feet, let's say, I am looking 5 foot over the top of my receiver. This is not relative to the point on the ground. This is actually looking over the top of the receiver. Cursor is pan or select. I would never get to it in from this screen. What I would do is go to the bottom right corner of Pocket3D, and I can select it here by tapping it. You have your pan, so you can pan around the job, and then you also have your selector, so you can select things on the job. Points, lines, whatever it may be. Okay. There's a point selected at line. When I do that, what it does is it gives me this information of what I've selected on the screen. View zoom. Zoom in, zoom out is no longer used. That is because in the new 15 code software, pinch to zoom is the most used. Just like your cell phone device, you can use your fingers to move around on the screen and pinch to zoom. So most likely, you won't be seeing those. What will be used is our zoom reaction. So what that is if I click on that guy and I specifically zoom in on a smaller spot, oops. I'm going to hit escape. What it does is it will zoom in on that exact spot that I want to use. Zoom extents is if I click on the zoom extent, what it does is it brings me over the top of the project. You must have a live connection to use zoom reaction. That is the view screen inside of Pocket 3D 15 code.